The English opening can be so tricky, especially if you don't know what to do against it. The easiest way to handle the English is to imagine as if you are facing the Sicilian defense with white pieces. E.g., against the Sicilian defense, my favorite opening at the moment is the alapin variation with pawn to c3, and most of my opponents here play knight f6, after which I go e5, knight d5, I play d4. If pawn takes, I take back with my c pawn. If d6, I usually attack the knight on d5 first, and after knight b6, I go bishop b5 check, then sacrifice my bishop on the next move like this, with pawn to e6. Point is, if bishop takes happens, now you simply go queen h5, wanting to checkmate. If g6, you just take on b5 with check, and after knight c6, you take on f7. Why not playing pawn to d5? Black can always play pawn to s6. For example, if you go d5 thinking you are going to win a free piece, again, there's pawn to s6. Your queen must move, probably to b3, and then they'll play knight d4. Yes, you still have check, but you don't want to run into this variation, so just take on f7 when you have a chance. I mean, after knight c6, just go e takes, making black lose their right to castle. This is what we do in the alpine variation against the Sicilian defense, and this is what I want you guys to always imagine and remember whenever you face the English opening as black. You just go pawn to e5 and plan to play the reversed alapin variation. If g3, you go c6, and after bishop g2, you go d5. Same stuff that we do even in the Sicilian defense alapin variation, cd, and always remember that knight c3 goes together with knight f6. Now hold on, there are times when your opponents will try to attack your d5 pawn many times. For example, with the move queen b3. See that white is attacking our d5 pawn 3 times with their pieces while it is only defended twice. So we need to do something about this. See that if we go bishop e6, which is playable in this position, looks like we're going to lose a free pawn. Again, if we play knight c6, the top engine move in this particular position, looks like we're going to lose a free pawn. I mean, even if we play pawn to d4, it looks like we are going to lose our b7 pawn. How about pawn to e5? Well, once again, it looks like we're not going to have much to do after pawn to d3 and pawn takes due to knight takes right away or just after pawn takes. So whenever you see queen b3, I want you guys to remember one move, and that is knight c6. Theory states you should sacrifice your d pawn for the time being. It's just a matter of time. For example, if they take with their knight, well, instead of taking back right away, you can play this intermediate move, knight d4, which is why you will see most English players playing pawn to e3, by the way. I'll talk about this later. But anyway, you go knight d4. This is what most of you guys don't see in the English opening. I mean, when white over attacks your d5 pawn. With knight d4, white's queen is kind of boxed and limited and also glued to their knight on d5. They can't go away. Queen a4 can be met with pawn to b5. If queen c4 is played, maybe to avoid this threat, you first of all want to take that knight. If bishop takes, you go pawn to b5. And sadly, white has to let go of their bishop or just play this intermediate move. You go king e7, and after queen d5, you win their rook on a1, like that. So you're just going to be up an exchange in this particular position. After queen c4 and knight takes, if they take back with their queen, once again, you can just go knight c2 check. Oversimplifying things, maybe first of all take here. After bishop takes, take that free rook, you're going to be up an exchange. And if anything, you want your knight to die with dignity. How? Like this. But hey, in this particular position, you can even try to rescue your knight like this, knowing that pawn to e4 can be met with knight b4. If bishop takes, you have rook b8. So this is how you defend these kinds of positions. Just know that in the English opening, it is possible to sacrifice our d pawn in exchange for rapid development and the knight d4 tactic, which is why back on move 4 after you take, then white plays knight c3, then you go knight f6, you will see most of your opponents playing pawn to e3 first. With this one move, they are not just preparing for d4, but they want to go queen b3. And that's why in these kinds of positions, you want to rush out with knight c6. If you don't play knight c6, chances are that white is going to play queen b3 and put more pressure on your d5 pawn. But anyways, knight c6, whenever you anticipate the move queen b3, or whenever you see this coming. I mean, this time queen b3 can just be met with pawn to d4 right away or knight b4. Or you're about to give them a check if d4 is played. Anyway, you can go knight d3 check, making white lose their right to castle and then you go pawn to e4. End of the chapter. And knight g4 is coming. That anyway, one move that kind of shocked me recently in the English opening was this one. After e5, my opponent played knight c3. And in my first anti-English tutorial, I said knight c3 equals knight f6. So at this point, I was expecting to see the move pawn to g3, after which I was going to play pawn to c6. I mean the reversed alapin variation like that. But my opponent started with knight f3 first, attacking my pawn. And here I made a mistake. In a split second, I blitzed out e4, thinking I was still going to hold on to my pawn after knight g5, without thinking twice about that. And what happened was, I couldn't hold on to my e-pawn. I saw that after queen e7, white was just going to play queen c2, and that's it. So this is where you want to play the move knight c6. But hey, if you really want to play c6 in the near future, you can also try some kind of the rat beginning with d6. Point is, after pawn to d4, now you play knight b d7. This is a very stable way of playing against the two knights English, if you think about it. And now it makes sense to advance your e-pawn if you want, or just go bishop e7, because here you are simply playing the rat defense. White plays pawn to e4 most of the times, or bishop g5, and now you go bishop e7. Bishop e2, this is no longer the rat defense, but just another opening involving the rat. This is why you just cast a short, play solid chess. But wait, what did I say in my rat defense video? Whenever you see knight c3, play pawn to c6 as early as possible to stop knight d5 and knight b5 in the near future. D takes e5 will be met by d takes e5. Sooner or later, you will put your queen on c7 and start marching to Zion. But anyway, castle shot, rook e1, rook e8, just a move, bishop f1, an indication that white wants to relocate their queen's knight to the king side. Queen c7, if knight e2, you take the free pawn, so they go queen c2 first. You play any move that makes a lot of sense. For example, even bishop f8, they play knight e2. These are moments where you want to release tension on the center by taking on d4 like we do in the Paris defense, so that if knight takes, you create a new square for your knight, or knight e5 perhaps, knight c5, triple attacks the e4 pawn. They can't do much. Maybe bishop d3, you take, they take, you go bishop d7, you keep on improving your position slowly but sure with those highlighted moves. Sometimes you want to play knight g4 and put your knight on e5, forget about it for good. So this is another way you handle the English opening. The main area of my meat in today's video was these two knights attack. Knight f3, which I didn't cover in my first anti-English tutorial video. Knight c6 is the main line, but if you want to leave room for pawn to c6 in the near future and d5, my top recommendation here would be pawn to d6 going into the rat defense, since this may, give you time to even play pawn to c6 if you want, going back to the reversed alapin variation. If you think about it, CD, if pawn to d4, you want to advance your e-pawn. If queen b3 this time, you can even advance your d-pawn, it doesn't even matter, or your e-pawn in this particular position, or even knight b6. You have plenty of options to take. This, knight d5, bishop d6 is always good, and castle shot. So this is how you leave your options open with the reversed alapin variation against the English opening. So once again, the goal is just to connect your center pawns. Even if white plays bishop g2 on move number 3, you go d5. They will usually take, and then you take back. Remember to just protect your center pawns at all cost. If knight c3, go d4. If knight e4, you trap that knight. If they play pawn to d4, you go pawn to e4. Say knight c3, what do? You can go bishop b4, get rid of that knight so that you don't worry about losing your pawn. Or start with knight f6, inviting bishop g5 to create that little trap, because you know that if knight takes d5, you will walk away with a free piece, either the knight or the bishop. So the plan is knight b d7, bishop d6, and castle short. Once again, after knight b d7, if white plays queen b3, you know what to do. Again, you just go bishop d6, waiting for the same trap to happen. I showed you what to do. If queen b5, stopping queen a5 in the near future. I said you should just castle short. Again, if knight takes d5, you remember to go s6, and there are some problems here. If knight takes, white is going to lose a free piece. If bishop takes, instead of gf this time, you can even take back with your knight. Knight takes check, then queen takes. The queen is still under attack. If queen c4, you go bishop e6, d5, queen takes b2. There are just so many traps that you can take advantage of if you think about it. So I better stop right here. In fact, in this position, you can even play rook sc8. White is losing. Maybe they should play rook d1, after which you go bishop check and king f1, same stuff, rook sc8, just so many tactics, queen b3, rook c1, and threaten to take that queen on the next move. By the way, you can check out my English opening course at www.KaspaChess.com or on my Patreon page. That's how you support this channel. I don't ask for donations or free money. So the way you support this channel is by joining one of our membership tiers on Patreon or simply buying my courses. That really helps. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below.